Where in South Africa?
Azange sanithumelela ukuthi niyohlala lapho. You sent you so that you can come back.
Yeah. I'm coming back when you have stopped your xenophobia there in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, I think in a short while, we are now live on Facebook, so I will limit what we say.
Where is live?
He's still in the farm.
Yeah, ngathi kutaba nenkingi.
I'm still waiting. I am checking on Facebook if you are live. So why is it not mute? Why is mute all not working? I can hear people. We had a similar challenge with last week when we had Mandla coming in late.
I thought I saw small.
manje wena utkhanza ngathi umchairman ungilenini.
We are going to be checking. Now I don't know because people just pop in on the screen without my direct permission. So now I am concerned. How do I even stop this, guys? We are now live on Facebook, so we may have to be very disciplined on what we say. Honestly, I'm trying to mute all of you, but I am struggling. So please maintain discipline, as it were. But I see that we now have our two panelists for the day. I think Zvumilano will join us later, but we're already getting some live, some correspondence from Facebook that they are hearing us properly, they are following. So I would assume that people are already eager to start the discussion. So in a while, I think we will try to start at exactly 7 o'clock so that we do not inconvenience those who are on time. But as it were, we are just continuously getting people in and confirming that everything is going well on other social media platforms. So yes, for now, I've already been in contact with Mr. Mavimbela, Linus Mfanafuti. I don't know, Linus, is it Mfanafuti or Mfanafuti?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that, is it Mfanafuti or Mfanafuti?
It's Mfanafuti.
Futi.
With an S.
Oh, with an S, okay.
Yeah, with an S.
I'm trying to get Mr. Stolle to be on, but he seems to be still unmuted. Oh, yes. Well, how do I?
It's like you muted everybody, including us.
Yeah, I included everybody, including, but I have unmuted both of you. Mr. Stolle, can I be sure that I can get you and you can get us properly as well?
Yes, I think I can.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. So I am now sure that we have you and
Mr. President. Hey, how are you, Mr.?
I'm good. Lines. I'm good.
Yeah. No, I'm okay. No, I'm going back to the days when you were my president.
I can tell. There used to be good days, man.
Yeah,
people must Lama titles in Boashale Kashane, man. We are now in the 21st century. Those titles are not saying.
Which titles are
Not to
those?
forget them, my
The
brother.
president. Now we've got new presidents of the SRCs and new presidents of other places.
No, but you guys are fighting for those titles. How can you say they are obsolete now? Africa is in such turmoil just because of those titles.
True. Very true.
Right. Yeah, we are getting a beautiful feedback from Facebook, and it seems that a lot of people are also gonna be logging in there. But at least I've confirmed that we are being heard properly, and people on Facebook are also confirming that they are hearing us properly. So I think if we have a problem, people will speak to us. But I wanted to say one thing though, that please, we have tried to that this time around we do not drag too long, because in our last conversation, if people were following, we tended to then drag a lot of things into the conversation, which kind of made it to be longer. And then we now have to be very sensitive to people waking up for work tomorrow. That's one. Two others also, their data and their battery and all of those other considerations. Yeah, and then also we said we are going to start at exactly 7, so I won't start now, at least until we are at least until 7. We are now a minute away.
All right, I will leave and come back again. I'm trying to connect to my laptop instead of my cell phone.
Okay, that's fine. We'll give you that leeway.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. But we must welcome our participants from Facebook and also on Zoom. We have structured the conversation in this way. We will try as much as possible to confine everything to within an hour and a half. But in the last half an hour, we would like to allow people to have comments, to make inputs to the discussion, even if it may not necessarily relate to questions in the direct sense. That is for the last hour, I think, the last 30 minutes. So we will, of course, alert you about that. And then also we will take questions as and when they come, especially on Facebook. We will take those questions so that the speakers can be able to follow. And then at the end of the day, I guess, when we feel that we are wrapping up, we'll then pick on those things that people may feel that we have left or missed. But to those who are joining us now, It's already 1900 in my time. I would like to welcome all of you to the second series of our webinar discussions about the history of students. We are joined today by way of recap. I would like to say that in our last webinar discussion, we had Mr. Mandla Hlachwago, who was the managing director of Ilovo and is now based in South Africa, who was also a student leader in the 80s and was very pivotal in the student politics of the time. We were also joined by Mr. Bongosi I.P. Dlamini, who was a student leader of the time as well, but also by work, he worked in several places, Sasol, in Swaziland, he worked in the sugar industry, and he also worked for the public protector in South Africa. He was the chief of staff there. He also worked in the Tuma Foundation as the managing director. He tells me now that he's enjoying his life in a farm. In our last discussions, we kind of tried to talk a little bit about what were the issues that defined student politics of the time. In particular, we were talking about the era between 1980 and 1989. And these were people who were knowledgeable about it in the sense that they knew what was happening because they were in the thick of things, but also by virtue of just reading or interacting in various platforms, they got to know information around this era. We are going to now be talking about the era in 1990 up until 1999. There are a lot of things. We are not going to go down to too much detail because there are a lot of things we want to have at least spoken about by the end of the discussion. And today we are joined by Mr. Linus Mavimbela. Linus Mavimbela is based in South Africa. He was a student leader, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a controversial one, because I think they were, at some point, they had to get the court to help them get back to the leadership of the SRC. But also he then left to go and attend school in South Africa first, at the UCT, and then in the UK and the US, but is now based in South Africa. And then Mr. Sloy Pistole is based in Swaziland. He's the current Chief Executive Officer of SWADE. Both these former student leaders were very active as leaders of students in the early and mid 90s. And fortunately for us, Mr. Stolle came at the university at a time when they had just finished, or rather they had just been a significant event, in this case being the Black Wednesday. So I think even though he was a young novice student, then he may have seen and observed things at the time that may be helpful in this discussion. He was the SRC president when there was a famous hunger strike. So yeah, I would like to, I hope I've said what is necessary for purposes of introducing our guests today. But for those who are just coming in now, I wish to say that one, we will ask you to ask questions, whether on Facebook or on Zoom. We will note your questions, and then our panelists will pick them up as and when they speak. So it doesn't have to be one bulk set where people are answering all your questions. So the one way is to post your questions on our Zoom chat room, and then also on our Facebook comments on the live session. So we can pick those questions there. And then I think on the end, we will, if someone who has strong comments or views about a particular issue, we will give one or two people an opportunity to know. So yeah, I've kind of taken 5 minutes doing that. I was hoping that by that time, Mr. Sloipe would have settled. Are you Oh, I see that he's still. Let me. I think he's. I can see that Mr. Stole needs to be allowed.
No, don't worry. We can proceed. I think it will be difficult for me to migrate, I realize.
Oh, okay. So yeah, maybe let me start by a few welcome remarks by the two of you before we start onto the main issues. Just a small part, Mr. Mama Vimbela, and then Mr. Stole. Just a minute or so.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure whether my video is working there because you have muted me, Mr. Host. But that's fine. It's okay. It doesn't have to be. But,
We have the people want to see you, but
I don't want to deny the people the opportunity to get to know who they are talking to.
Yes, now you are fine. Sorry, I had made a mistake there.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I'm assuming, Mr. Host, you are actually giving us an opportunity to greet your audience.
Yes.
Probably we must start by greeting you, and then we can greet your audience. And actually, I've seen a couple of people that I hadn't seen in a very long time, and it's actually good to see them. Yeah, we'll be talking about the 90s, and those were the days when we were students. And hopefully we will remember as much as we possibly can. And if we happen to miss a major event in our discussion, those who were part of the discussion must not kill us, but we will try to remember as much as we possibly can.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Stole Chobe, let me just invite you to greet our audience, which is growing spontaneously on social media.
Thank you, Mr. Host, and greetings to the audience. Thanks to Lines for a wonderful introduction. I will call him Lines because we called him Lines for being a hardliner in the SRC. I'm quite happy to be in this platform. I am happy to share as much as I can. Remember, this thing happened, I think, 30 years back now, and it's very difficult for me or both of us to remember everything. So we, in the audience, there are people that can still remember very well. So we are here to share our ideas as much as possibly can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you so much, Mr. Stone. I would like to start with you because, of course, when we spoke yesterday, you did provoke or tease me on something interesting with regards to your time at the university. Now, remind me again, when do you come at the University of Swaziland? And are you coming in at a time when you were already acquainted with things at the university, or you are just a newcomer, just immediately thrown into an institution already simmering with issues that had been boiling over from the 80s into the 90s?
All right. I joined the university in 1990. I started off with a diploma in agriculture, and I had a fair share of experiencing the Black Wednesday era, where there was Willie Matsebula and the lady, I forget her name. And then during those days, you would break after graduating and come back for your degree. So that is what happened to me. So I was there when the Black Wednesday started, and I was back in 1993, 94 to further my studies, do my PhD in agriculture. So I have a fair understanding of what happened during the Black Wednesday and what happened in the mid-90s.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, the Black Wednesday will be our starting point for today. I'm just curious. I don't know how old or young you were, but I would assume when you are at the university, you're already clued up. You kind of have an idea of things that are happening in campus and outside of campus. So I know that at the time, the SRC is led by Miss Kumalo Lindiwe, and the events that happened there are some of the things that we are starting to lose, because the generation of the early 90s either has muted itself in terms of sharing knowledge, so that researchers and people who ever get to want to study this period, they will not have information to write about. Now, maybe you can give us teasers around what were the issues that were at the university that led to the Black Wednesday, and what were the responses of the students? At least from your vantage point, it may not necessarily mean that you may have had the inner workings because you were obviously a first-year student, but what were the issues that defined the Black Wednesday?
Look, what I had as issues, because I was participating in the student body at the time. One, it was the poor food at the refectory. I recall I personally throwing food to the floor at that time. I also remember that there were issues of lack of lecturers, especially at Kwaluseni campus. And also in the agenda was an issue of a lecturer that was suspended from the university for promoting democratic activities or democracy in the country. So at that time, there was so much volatility around politics, and the state and the university administration wouldn't tolerate even a drop of what is political.
But are you talking about Dominic Ngomezulu? Because if I recall, in those times, was he not the one, or was it Ray who had been suspended? I need to be sure of that lecturer that you are referencing.
I can't remember very well, but I think maybe Lines can assist, but I think it was Dominic.
Yeah. Okay. So what? It was a combination of those things that may have led you to protest at the. But what was the response of the university? Because I would assume that when you get to the level of protest, it starts somewhere, negotiations, talking through the council, through the university. How were they responding to those things, to those issues that you are raising?
The experience I had with the University of Eswatini back then was that they sort of adopted the philosophy of adult to child kind of reaction or response to students instead of adult to adult. And at that time, if you are in disagreement with the administration, they would quickly resort to a disciplinary hearing, and beyond that, you are faced with a vicious discipline from the state itself.
Mm-hmm. So take us through now, because I recall that at the time there had just been the famous trial at which acquitted Sabelo Brazo, and then he became a central figure in some way or another to the issues at the university that led to the Black Wednesday. Do you recall anything regarding Sabelo and how his issues may have contributed or influenced the activities of Black Wednesday?
Yes, I remember the issue of Sabelo. I missed it out on the issues I presented. I don't remember clearly whether he did get subjected to the 60 days detention that we had at the time. The state had a 60 days detention for anybody that goes against it. So Sabelo was amongst political activists during our days, a very strong political activist. And I recall that he was definitely taken by the police, whether he was imprisoned or something. But I remember that as students, we were in solidarity with him, and it was part of our agenda at the time.
Yeah. So how strong and united was the SRC on those issues that you are mentioning in terms of putting these issues on the agenda? And they seem to cut across students and and political issues. Were you addressing your grievances to the university or to the state? I don't seem to get exactly, because those issues seem to be between students and the state. What were the grievances? Who are they directly addressed to?
Our grievances were directly addressed to the administration. Well, first and foremost, as students, we believe that all students have a right to education.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the case may be, all of us had a right to education. And we believed that the administration had a duty to protect our right to education. That's number one. Then the next thing is our welfare. And our welfare basically came with the issues of a good refectory, good food. And then we also wanted, at that time, we really wanted to have a voice on even issues of politics, aiming at building the country into its future. We didn't want to be left out. At that time, we had the labor unions picketing over issues of workers' rights. And they had what they declared 27 demands. And at that time, we had political parties like Pudemo who were also advocating for multi-party democracy in the country. And we also had quite a number of issues which in the environment was actually pushing everyone to start thinking a future Swaziland, a different country than what it was before. And of course, there was a lot of transformation that took place at that time.
Yeah, now that you say that, you remind me, because I happen to have read one of sociology lecturer at the university who wrote something about his time in the early 90s, and I would assume that it was almost during that time. Ray Racine. Ray Racine writes, and I happen to have had the privilege to have read what he wrote about that period, and how the state response to Black Wednesday kind of impacted to them as people who are now not just students, but staff as well. Do you recall at the time how the response of the state to the issues that were raised by the students, how did it impact not just the students, but lecturers or support staff? I mean, we always hear that the state was very heavy-handed in how it responded to that. What is your recollection of those events?
Yes, everybody actually was affected. My interactions with lecturers back then, they were all uncomfortable with what happened during the Black Wednesday, situation. I know that, for instance, Dr. Mzizi was one lecturer that was vocal, and he was quite open about it. I think he even wrote articles in the papers to say he's never seen such violent method upon students at that time, and unnecessarily so. We got into a situation where we were in a state of fear in the country, because you never know what would happen to you at that time.
Yeah, so I wanna bring in lines here now. Before we get into the later stage, I know that you were still a young man, maybe even before you got into the university. But if I recall very well, you went to St. Paul's. I know you lied to people that you went to Waterford, but you went to St. Paul's High School, Lines, ne?
Yeah, you're very much correct. And I'm very proud that I actually went to St. Paul's. So I never tell people that I actually went to Waterford.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But I actually came to the university just a year after the Black Wednesday, which happened in November 1990. And so I was the first year in 91. And that's when I joined the university. And when we came in, actually, speaking for myself, I had already participated in student politics at high school. If you remember the students' uprising of 1989, I was actually part of that. And I got a fair share of the treatment of the police at the time. So I already knew.
Yeah, but
what was.
I remember that was that one that was led by Guseni Dlamini, the student union, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Was it that that student thing? And what were the issues then?
There were quite a number of issues. And to be honest with you, I was not very much in the forefront of it. But it related to the fact that there had been a teacher strike in that year, and we believed as students it had affected our curriculum and our learning, and therefore we wanted government to do something about that, because government was then now talking about the exams and everything else that had to happen, as if something had not happened, as if there had not been the strike, as if the student had not been affected by the teacher strike. So that was kind of the core thing that had happened then.
So were you organized into a formal formation, like as it were the student union, or it was a sporadic thing led by people like Sabit? Did you get a sense that you were? I mean, I can imagine you were a high school student at the time, and then there are these student issues that are coming. Were they organized under a particular banner of an organization, or it was just a sporadic thing that affected students at high school level and just everyone was all over the show?
No, it was actually organized. If I remember very well, and this is like a very long time ago, if I remember very well, there was a new student organization. I think it was called Snacks at the time. I don't remember. You will forgive me for the term, but that was the structure, and it was new actually. And this activity was kind of a launch of that structure that was meant to organize high school students. So that's how we were organized, and that's how we were marshaled, and that's how we participated in that activity. But like I say, it was something that one was not very close to, but it actually planted a very significant seed, and it's actually something that kind of opens someone's eyes and say, hang on, something is happening around here, and you should be part of it.
So who were the student leaders? I've just mentioned Hussein at the time that you can recall for your period.
There were a couple. I remember predominantly it was the Salesian boys. That's how it was called. I think if you remember very well, I think Vincent Dlamini was one of those people who were actually in the leadership. Comfort was also one of them, the late Comfort Nteto, and there were a couple of them. But probably that's one thing that actually created interest, and it opened one's eye. So when we got to the university in 1991, some of us had already, had their eyes open, and we were already looking for things. We were already looking for issues that actually concern students, issues that concern the youth, and issues that concern actually the general populace of the country and the region. So we were already, sharp into those things. So when we got to the university at that time, maybe one can mention a few things just to add to what Sulaipe said. So if you try to locate the 1990s or the early 1990s, you will remember that nationally, the country, obviously led by the government, was trying to write a constitution, and they were already engaging in a process which was called Vuselas. And that was meant to conclude by a document that is called the Constitution. So the current constitution that we have, that was written and announced in 2005, in 1995, if I remember very well, was a product of that. And then there were also other things that were happening. The labor force was actually beginning to get a voice, and they were starting to actually stand up and talk about the things that actually concerned them. And as a youth, we were also interested in what was happening in that space. We had a clear understanding that both the Constitution, when concluded and finalized, and the issues, workers' issues or labor issues would impact us one way or another. And we had a very keen interest in that. Now, if you bring that at home now, if you bring it to campus and you look at what was happening on campus now, you will remember that obviously there was that 1990 massacre of students, and students were still very bitter about that. And then there were also, other issues which actually related to the fact that when you are a student at the university and you are on campus, you were actually not allowed to choose where you wanted to take your meals. You were forced to take your meals in the refectory, whether you like it or not. And again, that also was something that we thought it was infringing our rights, because we believed that it's one thing to choose that I'm going to take accommodation, but it is another that I will be forced to eat the food that I really didn't want to eat. And Siroib has already mentioned that the quality of the food actually was not that great. But also, we also came to realize that the university was using the refectory as a means of fundraising, because every time there is a student activity that they didn't like, they would close the university, they would send the student home. And when we come back, they would never talk about refunding us the monies that we had paid for the meals that we never took. So again, that was an issue that we were sort of alive to, and we wanted to deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. I will hold that thought lines, because I want to come to Mr. Stolle here. I want to, there's a nice transition that Lines is putting in around how he comes from high school. Already there were already issues within students that he gets into the university, already has a kind of a clue up. I'm interested in the 90s. There may have been some remnants of South African exiles in the country. Were there others that you may have found at the university, and what influence or no influence did they have to the student activism that was happening at the time, especially with regards to Black Wednesday? That's one. And then secondly, it had been a while in my recollection that there had been a female student leader leading at a level of president. How easy was it for Ms. Khumalo to lead as a student leader during Black Wednesday as a woman?
Yeah, all right. The experience that Lines had at high school, actually, I also had. In 1989, I was a completing student at Mbabane Central. I led in my own right the students there, with others, of course. When I got to the university, I had actually had some experience in student activism. Nonetheless, let me just get straight to what you asked. Yes, South Africans were there. We had lots and lots of South Africans involved in our student body and participating actively. But I think they only had very little influence. The issues that we're talking about were real pertinent issues that were affecting students at the time. The only thing probably that one could credit the South African students with was that they appeared a lot brave than us as Swazi. They appeared very clued up about the struggle. And while we were shy, they were ready to push on. I think that's what we can credit them for. But they never influenced Eswatini students to do things the way they did it. They did it because there was reason for it. It was based on real reasoning, no influence from outside.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm interested on the part about Ms. Khumalo. To what extent was she respected and given the due leadership because she was a woman, and given that she was leading at a very tumultuous time like Black Wednesday?
To be honest with you, I'm just realizing as we speak that Lindio was a woman. Lindy was something else when it comes to the leadership of the student body. She was absolutely fabulous. You would never think she wears a skirt, I wear a trouser. She never had any problems. I wish she was here to speak for herself. But from me as her follower at that time, I think Lindy was fabulous. I don't think she ever struggled with anything. She actually led us the best possible way she could. She had a vice president that was a male. And to be honest with you, we loved Lindy more than the male student.
So maybe I want to get in now. What were the events on the day that triggered the police action and reaction? And how did the police actually get involved into this? Because I would think this is an interaction between university and students. How do police get in? And what triggered them to react the way that they did? Because I will show you why I'm saying this. Because I read somewhere Dr. Smilane had written about the events, and he was sharing to me that apparently the students had stayed on campus, and then there was a fear that they were going to burn down the building, and then that was the trigger for the police to act as it were, as they did. So maybe this may not be true or otherwise. What do you recall to have been the things that led the students, or rather the police, to act as they did? Trigger.
All right, I may not recall everything well, but all I know is that students had their agenda on top of the table, and the administration of the university didn't pitch up to respond accordingly, and they resorted to their usual strategy. If you persist on what you believe is right, they either close the university. If they don't close the university, they will a few and try to discipline. And if all that fails, they call the police. So basically, here the students had done nothing that would trigger the intervention of the state, but the administration chose. That is my thinking about this. Chose to come up with a strategy that would fuel the state to intervene by saying what you've just said, because students immediately seeing the police in campus ran to the library thinking that nobody will touch them once they are in the library. And when they were in there, then there was this talk that they want to ban the library itself. And you wonder how they would ban a library in which they are inside. If they wanted to ban the library in the first place, I think they could have just banned it immediately when the police were approaching the library. They didn't do that. Instead, they tried to run out of the library. It was a sorry sight. It was really sad, to see students jumping from the high floor of the library down, trying to run through the door and getting kicked and stumbled in all sorts of violence meted upon. It was a painful thing, and I don't know why the administration did that. And basically that pushed us who followed in the leadership to demand a report on the Black Wednesday, which up to today, that report has not come out.
But there's an interesting thing that Lines was able to link beautifully between the things that are happening in campus and the things that are happening in campus. And I'll come back to him on that in a bit. I want to find out from you, there was a meeting, if I recall very well, at the time, of the heads of states in the country. They had assembled in the country. And this thing happened. I am not sure what was the name of that meeting, if my memory serves me well. So that meeting was meant to to be, in fact, was held in the country, and then this Black Wednesday happened, and at the time also we have this constitutional making process that is contested itself. There is also the issue about the treason trial and the Sabelo and the support that students are giving him, and the lecturer that is suspended. Now, would it be reasonable for me sitting here to say that the state's heavy-handed response to student issues may have been led by a belief that you were influenced by political forces which were operating clandestinely?
All right. Is Lines coming in there, or I should come in?
No, I think come in there. I will also, the same thing, I will also ask Lines, but from a different angle.
All right. Like I said, the political situation in the country was was really volatile. So at that time, the state would politicize anything. They couldn't differentiate between student politics and the state politics. And definitely what you are saying, they did assume that students were being influenced, politically influenced, maybe by South African, maybe by political parties that were there in the country. But as far as I'm concerned, that was not the case. The real case here was there was a situation in the country where, like Lines has already indicated, we had a constitution that was being done, and we had the labor unions picketing for their rights, and we had quite a number of other issues politically related that were taking place. And as students and the youth of the time, we had a role to play. And I think as a youth of the time, we played our role very well, because we wanted to influence the political developments as well of the country. We also wanted to influence our academia, as it were.
Yeah. Yes, I want to come back to you, Lines. You get into the university, and then I don't know if it was your first year or the second year that you are now contesting into the SRC, and they do not want to put you, or the SRC is controversial. Apparently, the matter ends up in court. I want to find out. Give us a take. What was controversial about the SRC, about your SRC, that led to the court case? And ultimately, the hunger strike that you were involved in.
So actually, actually the issue of the court case happened right at the beginning. So probably maybe one can step back and say, if you look at what had been happening post the Black Wednesday, which was 1990, the administration of the university became very heavy-handed. They wanted to make sure that they suppressed students in all possible ways. And that is when then they came up with Article 4.2 of the Student Constitution. And their interpretation, so according to the article was saying, if you are, so first and foremost, the elections of the SRC that was supposed to take office the following year used to happen a year before. So it used to happen just before the end of the academic year. And according to the constitution of the students then, students who were doing their final year at the time of the elections were not allowed to participate. And that made sense, because by the time they are supposed to serve, they would not be on campus. So that made sense. But the university administration decided to interpret this differently. They would then say, if you will be in your final year, at the time of serving, then you are not supposed to stand for the elections. And they would do this actually selectively, because if there were students who were actually campaigning for office in the SRC, and they sort of considered them to be part of the progressive students who would cause problems for them, then they would pull out that article and say, actually, you are illegitimate. But then if it is other students that they are actually, kind of in bed with, they didn't mind, so they would look away. So that was the main problem, actually. So when we got into office, we were actually in our 3rd year when we campaigned, which means we would be in our 4th years at the time of serving. And obviously realizing that we were actually the wrong crowd, they decided that then they're gonna sort of segregate us using Article 4.2. And they had actually done that before and they had succeeded. But when we actually decided to actually take office and stand for the SRC elections, we knew this would happen. And we actually had gone in there with a plan on how we're gonna deal with it. So that is what happened, So when we got into office, the administration revoked Article 4.2, and then the process started. And we ended up going to court to seek for the interpretation of the court. And as expected, the students were victorious. And that did not sit well with the administration.
So what then led, if you have now victorious, what led to the hunger strike, and who are involved? Was it all the members of the SRC, or it was a selection of you people who decided to engage in? What was the thing that was at the center of the hunger strike? What triggered it?
Okay, probably before we get into the hunger strike itself, maybe one can cover some of the activities that actually happened. So remember, like I said, it's now students 1, administration 0.
Yeah.
And with an administration that is not used to losing, that was an insult. So obviously now they were actually looking into getting back to us, the students. So again, the students had a resolution that was saying every year they will commemorate Black Wednesday. And us being the organized SRC that we were, we actually planned in advance that we are going to organize the commemoration of the Black Wednesday, but we wanted it to be like one of the best that the students had ever seen. So we started early with the organization. And when the Black Wednesday, the actual day, arrived, it was well attended, well organized, and the students were actually booming with confidence. They were now that they could see that it is possible to win against the administration. The fear was kind of reduced because the administration had actually succeeded in introducing fear, in the corridors of the university. But us having won, and actually them now trying to sort of get confidence from that winning, the commemoration was very well. And again, that did not sit well with the university. So then they started some provocations that actually led to the students saying, no, that's not going to happen. So one of the things that actually happened is that some of the lecturers started intimidating their students, telling them that they must attend class on this day, otherwise they will fail. And obviously, students, they then start looking and thinking, hey, I come from somewhere and probably this is the only opportunity I have to be something. And therefore they would start then panicking, and they would then, some would start attending, others would not attend. And again, those who do not attend would feel like, no, they are now being disadvantaged by those that have attended. Yet there is a student resolution that says this day will be set aside for commemoration. So then when lecturers started doing that, then the students decided that no, to protect those students that had been forced to attend class under duress, and those that have actually been patriotic to the resolution of the students, we then need to go and make sure that all those that had attended are saved from the lecturers. And that is what then sparked the events of the day.
Oh, okay. So I am trying to picture now that you must have been the most unfortunate SRC or group? Because you're coming, the university has just been had by Black Wednesday itself, by you now insisting to want to commemorate something that doesn't sit well with them. And now suddenly you are in the office. How was it easy for you after the victory, after organizing the student body? Were you expelled leading to the Black Wednesday, or there was some kind of disenfranchisement that you faced in some way or another? And I want to know, who were these people that were involved in the hunger strike? Were they from the same department, and what linked you together as a group of students? What was the common thread around you?
Maybe one can start about the common thread. So if you remember very well, at that time, there were two campuses. So there was the Gwatuseni campus, and then there was the Luyengo campus. At that time, Babane was not part of the university. So the SRC then, in terms of taking office, especially the presidency and the secretariat, used to alternate. So the one year it would be, the president would come from Luyengo. The other year, the president would come from Gweluseni. And if the president is coming from Gweluseni, then the secretary would come from Luyengo. And that's how we swapped. And that is why when we started here, before we started actually officially, I was saying to Siloe, my president, because at that time, he was the president of the SRC and he was coming from Luyengo. But probably one thing that probably maybe is very critical and is worth mentioning is that if you look at the group of people that were coming from Luyengo, we were actually not just student leaders only. Amongst other things, we were friends. I mean, there was a couple of us who had been friends for a very long time. If you look at Vincent, you look at Comfort, you look at a number of people, you look at Bongane. I saw Bongane is here. So we were not just leaders of the students. We were friends beyond that. But also, like I said earlier on, we were also switched on in politics. And some of us were actually active in youth politics through Swayoko. So we were just not looking at one thing. We had sort of a broad understanding of the politics, right from national to campus. So that is one thing that actually glued us together. But the one thing that I want to say that was very critical, that actually made us succeed in the way that we succeeded in challenging the administration, is that there was one thread that was actually going on between us. And that thread was each one of us, both from Luyengo and from Gwalusen, did not want to lose. Nobody wanted to lose. You know, we could fight. We had our own challenges, by the way. It's not like everything was smooth. We would disagree until we agreed to disagree. We would actually debate throughout the night on certain issues that we actually did not agree on. And sometimes we would part ways early in the morning, having agreed that we disagree on certain issues. So we had our own challenges. But the one thing that threaded us together all the time is that we did not want to let the students down. We did not want to lose on a matter that we believed we were fighting for the right cause.
But I'm still not getting just one thing, that what led to what was the trigger for the hunger strike? I wanna now zoom into why do you decide to engage in that hunger strike before I move in with Mr. Stone. I'm curious, if you were to be much pointed on this, what led you to the hunger strike? What are how did you engage in terms of practicality? Were you seated at home not eating? Were you at the gate? There may be newbies now who may not know about this, so they may need to be filled in.
So probably, I'm assuming you still expect me to go on, but
yeah.
Probably just I was trying to lay the foundation, because if I say the other things without mentioning the foundation, then probably there would be a disjuncture there. But maybe fast forward. On the day of the commemoration, obviously, the administration is not happy. It then reacts by closing down the university as an ultimate thing. So the university is closed, students are told to go home, and they are told that they will be notified as to when they should come back. So everybody packs their bag, except for some of those that were sort of trying to fight back, but everybody packs their bag and they go home. University stays closed for a very long time. And then the university decides that while students are at home, they're going to start on an inquiry to find out exactly who were the people that perpetrated whatever they believed was wrong. You know, they still wanted to treat us like we were children, and therefore they started this inquiry. And each student had to come, sit in front of whatever structure that the administration had set up, and actually explain themselves what role they played on this fateful day. And fast forward, the university concludes its inquiry, and it decides that it's going to expel some of the students. Some of the students, and I'm one of those students that actually decided that I'm not going to participate in this inquiry no matter what, because I already knew what the outcome would be. So I didn't see the point. I didn't believe it was a fair inquiry, and I did not participate. I never went there. And obviously the outcome was that we're going to be fired. So a number of us were fired, including Mr. President here. He was one of those people that were actually excluded, not just expelled, excluded from the university.
Whoa.
And that means we were actually, I remember the document that we got from the lawyer that was saying there was a specific distance we were supposed to keep away from the gate of the university at all times. We were not allowed to come that close to the gate. And at the time when this happened, you even to go and get your things from the room, you were supposed to be escorted by the police. And that is how you would move around campus if you wanted to get something from campus. So that was how it was. But then probably one can take a few steps backwards to say, again, when we moved into office, we had sat down and we had planned different scenarios that were most likely to play. And we had a plan and a strategy for each scenario. And being, excluded from university was one of the scenarios. And we already had a plan. We knew what we were going to do if the university excluded us. And we knew that one of the tools that we were going to use was we were going to participate in hunger strike. But obviously we had planned to do a lot of work, which we actually did. So then I can't remember exactly the numbers, but it wasn't the entire SRC that actually was participating in the hunger strike. But it was actually a few of us. I think there were 8 or 7 of us. Predominantly, it was the members of the SRC that had been excluded, and a few who were not members of the SRC, but also had been excluded, and they actually believed that this had to be done. So before we actually engaged on the hunger strike itself, we then agreed as leaders, and we identified the president at the time, Silwaipi, to say, not everybody should be part of the hunger strike. And we mandated him to say, you are gonna stay outside the hunger strike, but you have a role to play. You are going to be the link between those who are on hunger strike and the rest of the world. And that's the role that he played. And he played it very well, because time and again, he would come to give us feedback where we were, and he would take sort of a mandate and he would go and execute it wherever he's supposed to execute it. And that's the role that he played, until the hunger strike was over. Now, to answer your question, where we were on the hunger strike, we were sitting right at the gate of the university, right at the gate, and that's where we were sitting. And that is where we sat there for about 7 days.
Sorry, how did you last?
Sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
No, I was just checking, maybe I disturbed you, you were going there. I want to check how long did that hunger strike last?
It was about 7 days. I remember very well. The day it ended, it was February 7, which is my birthday.
Yeah.
And
Hold that thought now. I want to bring in Mr. Stoli because I want to talk about the intra-dynamics of the team that was leading the hunger strike. Because I am aware that at some point you polarized yourself. You had intense disagreements. But I want to throw in Mr. Stoli here. Just, I'll come back to you. Have a thought about that question around. Mr. Stoli, now here you find yourself, you are dealing with these activists. And I am made to believe you were actually coming in with support of the Christian group that supported you into the SRC. And now suddenly you have to deal with these rascals who are politically minded. They had planned this thing well ahead. How easy was it for you, given that most of the things were happening perhaps at Kwalusen and you are at Luyango campus and you are at the top level leadership, to be bundled together with these activists, and then every consequence they are facing, you are also facing, you are excluded, you are doing this and that. How challenging and easy was it a role to assume at the time? And what support did you get outside of the university as students at the time?
Thank you, host. To be honest with you, it was really tough. It was really, really challenging. These guys are something else. I haven't met. Although in my workplace right now, I work with great guys, but I don't think I've met people of these great minds. I will quickly take you through their characters. I recall it.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Lines was our silent yet very tough strategist. And when I want to manage them, I would listen to him, what he says. Bongan Masugu, I'm glad he's in here. He was a nightmare to manage, a real nightmare. We at times strategized around him. When we want to go and negotiate, we would all agree, let's not send Bongan because Bongan is a soldier. He's gonna go there and bulldoze everyone. And then there was this gentleman, Vincent Lamini. He was again another very strong strategist. If you want good ideas, listen to Vincent. You will be able to move. And trust me, when Vincent speaks and suggests certain things, we would all listen. And if you want to manage the rest of the group at some dynamism of some point, you just need to make sure that you touch the right buttons. So I would touch lines when I really want to push things the hard way, and I would touch Vincent when I want the SRC to listen to what I want. But of course, when it comes to no compromise, now we really want to make things happen, to move things. Oh, Bongan Masu would be the right man to put in front. When we go toying, that was our top man. Otherwise, like Lines has said, these brains would come together. It's just not only them, but I use them a lot to actually manage the SRC. But when it comes to sitting down and strategize on issues, the SRC of that time, which is top guys, I recall that because I didn't have any political connections, they did. So they would always direct me to people that can give me help. On several occasions, I would go to quite a number of Pudemo cadres to actually help me network with people that would help us with finance, because we also had no money as students. I also had to connect with certain organizations that would help us. And again, I would rely on the SRC to provide me with those connections. And that is how we went about doing our SRC business.
Yeah, Mr. Stodd, I'm curious about the law guys, because it seems to me these are social sciences okay, the Bonganes and everyone. Okay, Vincent maybe much more into the sciences. But there was MJ there, there was Tulan Masego, there was Velapi there, all of them coming from the low background. How was it dealing and engaging with them, and what were their thoughts in processing into this whole hunger strike?
All right, I was just mentioning this as by example. Yes, everybody in the SRC had a role. If you talk of Tulan Masego, he was my vice president. He was the man that advised me from time to time. He was never nice. I'll be honest with you. He was never nice. When I don't get things right, he would really lambast me. I recall when the university closed during our commemoration of Black Wednesday, I got tricked to go and meet the administration. They invited me as president to go and meet them. Yet they were planning to close the meeting, the university, while I am in discussion with them, because they knew that if we are all there in the multipurpose hall, it would be difficult for police to enter the university, because we will see them as soon as they enter and we'll make resolutions. We're so fast in making decisions and we were so swift in acting. So I went there and Tulani took me to task, and I really felt bad because I made a mistake. MJ was a warrior, basically. Vela P. Dlamini was another law student who would always remind us of what the law says about what are the actions that we're planning to take all the time. And beyond this, the law students were quite supportive. They actually, in our think tank, maybe Lines forgot to mention that one, in our think tank, we had a good number of law students who would always remind us to act in accordance with the law of the country. And sometimes we would defy them.
Yeah. Okay, now I want now to give me a bite around the people who were supporting you. I recall that the SFTU, they formed a parents association of some sort, like this support that you could get outside of the student bodies. And as you say that there were these political activists within Pudemo and otherwise who were giving support. How much and to what extent was support given to US students outside of the students themselves?
Well, a lot. Like you mentioned, SFTU was one ally of ours. They really worked right around the clock. They basically the organization that even organized so well our appeal to His Majesty when we were to go back to the university. When we had quite a number of groups, SFTU was one, Pudemo was a critical ally of ours as well, my Christian movement at the university, and then the parents themselves. The way we were organizing, mobilizing people around the issues that we were handling at the time was unbelievable. We managed to get parents involved, and we managed to get them to form a committee, and that committee engaged the university administration. They tried their best, although it was very difficult for them. They didn't manage to make any progress because the administration was quite tough at that time. But nonetheless, we had a group of parents, not a group of, a committee of parents that supported us. And even the Christian community in the country did give us support. I also remember that in my networking, I also had a university in Tanzania that was supporting us a lot. Even in Mozambique, we had networks there. We also networked with the ANC as well.
I want, now that you mentioned the ANC, I want to bring in Mr. Zvumela Nonyembe here because I want to assume that the decade, before I come to you, Lines, I want to assume that the decade that we are talking about had a lot of things that are happening beyond just student issues. And having been at the university at William Pitcher in the 90s, actually graduating in 1990, and having been involved in youth politics beyond just the university, there is a lot that happened in the 90s. There is the constitution making process. There is the SFTU strike. There is a lot of this. There's the ANC is unbanned and its rippling effect into the country. I want to find out from him, based on his own experience, before I come to Lines, to what extent how does he explain the events of the 90s as it relates to students? But I'm not sure if I am able to unmute Zvumelwano.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Nyembe, you can come in now. Just have a look, just give us a take around that period in the 90s in a bit. I mean, just looking at it, you have a very nice way of explaining the ups and downs of that decade, the gains and losses.
Well, Putemo just in itself at that point. And we were discovering each other within the movement, because in the underground, Putemo was very small. And in terms of you only knew people in your particular cell, you did not really know the whole movement. And also the movement was being overwhelmed by membership, because everyone thought we were Putemo at that time. Anyone who thought politics thought I was a Putemo member. And we were trying to formalize the movement. And then formalizing the movement, and then there was the 27 demands, which then became a national project that all of us have to do. But then Putemo, Swayoko depended on students. And we had to work with the students, because a lot of the students, there was no separation most of the time between the SRC and the Swayoko cadre. So you'll find that there were two things happening. There are things were happening on campus, but the same individuals were people who were organizing in Swayoko structures and Swayoko programs. So those things were happening. But then what was interesting is that we needed the people outside who were working to actually fund, transport students, because it was a problem. And you understand that also that the movement itself does not have an external funding. So a lot of money that Putemo used or Swayoko used were locally solicited funds, people helping there and there. But at the same time, we were thinking about this country that we are trying to create, where we want to move from, where we want to move to. And the state itself was not very clear what we were going to do. They were not even clear of our capacity. Sometimes they actually thought we had more capacity than maybe we did at that particular time. And the state was reorganizing its spying infrastructure. It was organizing its security, and a lot of things. And within it, you could see that the state did not fully control even that security, because sometimes you'll see that certain police will work on their own without an instruction and do certain things. But the students were being supported by the structures, because SFTU, Putemo, Swayoko, and other structures, we had these student struggle as a national struggle, as part of those fronts that we were fighting to change the country at the time.
Yeah, but I'm just curious on this one point, that there's this turmoil at the university starting in the early 90s, including Black Wednesday, rolling over to the time of the hunger strike. Two things that I would like you to be direct with before we go to some of the questions that people have raised. One, I want to check you. You seem to suggest that you were, in one way or the other, involved in one capacity or the other in influencing student politics. outside, even if you are outside of the university. That's one. But secondly, I'm now curious to find out, how did the SFTU demands, for example, either influence students or students influence those demands? And what were the gains of the decade? I'm curious, I really want to find out, what were the gains as a progressive minded person, you think, because there's that SFTU demand and then there's the constitutional making process. What were the gains and what were the losses? Just those two things.
Well, there were lots of gains. One of the gains is that we made politics to become what Swazis can talk about. They've just came out of a period where even the word politics was feared by people. So we've made them to be able to talk. And then also, we have been able to transform the SFTU to enter into the political arena. We just came out of the high treason period where the SFTU tried to distance itself from politics. So there was a lot of work that went in to make the SFTU realize that labor issues were political issues, that the national political issues were very critical to achieve labor objectives. So we've just arrived at that to make SFTU a national organization that is deep into politics. That was one achievement. And then also, we have made the state to be accountable, to try to be accountable. At that period, it was the first time the king will come from a trip and make a report at the airport and try to say, I went there and this is what I've done. You know, that was another effect that was happening, that even the institution of the monarch itself was starting to say before they do things, and then they change their communication to sort of predict what we may say. So that also became something that we achieved. Even the discussion of the constitution, the consultation, the Vuselas, and all those things, those were achievements. Those were response of the 27 demands. So I think we actually achieved a lot. We changed the country. The country 5 years before 1990, it was a different country. In the early 90s, we changed it.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks, Mr. Nyembe. I can't hear you now. I think
you can't get me.
Yeah, no. I can hear you now. I was saying, no, thank you so much. I want to come back to Linus because we don't have much time now. Maybe I'll come back to you just for a bite at the end. But I wanted a perspective lines just from outside the university. Someone who perhaps have a bird's eye view of events that are happening that define the decade. But yeah, we are back to you at the gate 7 days later. I'm curious now, we don't want to romanticize history, but you did have disagreements as SRC, sorry, as the people who are engaged in this hunger strike, and some of which were very intense. Take us through into that and what ultimately led to the end of the hunger strike. And if at all you feel that you did make any gains or won something on the basis of that.
Yeah, no, we actually had a lot, like we said, we were a very diverse group. And actually that was a plus, because if you look at the structure, just to step before I answer your question, if you look at the composition of the SRC at the time, almost every faculty was represented. You know, in the past, you would never see people from the science faculty participating in student politics. It was a taboo for that to happen. But if you look at our SRC, there were some, so I mentioned Vincent. I was also in the Faculty of Science, and that was kind of a first if you look at it, and that therefore means the science students were actually seeing themselves as part of the SRC, and they were seeing themselves as part of the studentry, and therefore they were willing to actually provide the support that was necessary, even though they never used to. There were people from the law faculty, there were people from the social science faculty, there were people from the different faculties, there were people from the agricultural faculty that were representing them. So what that meant is it kind of reinforced every student to participate in the activities of the students. And that was the good thing about it. Now, so as we were in the sitting at the gate, starving ourselves and saying we are not going to take anything into our tummies unless and until these particular issues that we're raising are addressed. And again, we used to have continuous consultations with the students. Sometimes the students would organize prayers so that they can get access to us. And then we'll be able to interact with them to say, this is what we're thinking now. And this is the strategy that we think would work. These are the different scenarios that we've played in thing. And this is what we think probably may produce the results that we're looking for. And so as we were doing that, we got to a point where we decided that no, we actually understand that as part of the leadership of the university, as part of the administration, there is an office of the chancellor. And that office is actually occupied by the king. We therefore decided that it is time that we go and we actually inform him of the developments that are happening on campus, so that he does not then say, but you never told me. And secondly, so that then he can have an opportunity to actually address it if he can. So that is how, therefore, we came to the decision to say, we picked a day and we say, on this particular day, all the students are going to accompany us and they are going to go and see the king so that they can actually, take him through what is happening at the university. And that is how we ended up going to Lozita on this particular day. And we actually met the king. He actually welcomed in, and then he addressed us. He then took the decision to say he actually wants all those people that have been expelled to actually go back, be allowed to go back to campus and be students again. He then said he's then gonna follow the protocol in terms of sending representatives to communicate that to the administration. So that is how the hunger strike ended, if I can actually try to summarize it.
Yeah. Okay, Lance, I want, the one mistake that we didn't know, maybe I don't call it a mistake. The one thing that we didn't do very well last time in our discussion was then to go into contemporary Swaziland. Mr. Stolle went on to become a CEO at Swade. You became a leader in various banks. Now you're in the senior management in Nedbank. What lessons on management, on leadership, on transparency, on accountability that your own experience at the university has taught you? Because our country today is at a crossroads. We are not doing well. Economically, politically, social economics of the country are not doing well. And so what from the experience of your activism as a student and the leadership position you currently hold now at your institution, what do you think to the university itself are lessons that you think you feel they could have done better, that can be done better, beyond just the university, to the country now, to all of these challenges that we're facing? What do you think? What is the way out? We are seeking to hear the widest voices. What is our solution to these problems we're facing as a country? I'll start with you, Lines.
Well, I'm not sure whether I have all the solutions to the problems of the country, because they seem to be quite a lot. But if one were to start by saying, the one thing that I actually believe in is that if you are a human being, let alone a leader, you've got to be honest. You've got to be honest on the things that you do. And that talks to your values. So as leaders, you're supposed to have very good life values. And that for me is key. And if you are a leader, take the case of the university administration. It is very important that one, as a leader, you identify all stakeholders and you take them into consideration. You must listen to their views. You mustn't be Mr. Know-it-all or Miss or Mrs. Know-it-all. Every stakeholder in any society, be it a corporate, be it a university, be it a country, all the stakeholders are important and they must be allowed to voice their views on matters that concern them. In other words, everybody must be allowed to be an architect of their own life. And for me, that is critical for a leader. And the other thing I think that is very important is that for you to actually demonstrate that you are a leader worthy to be followed, you need to have a clear strategy or plan or tactic on the issues that are pertinent to the people and the country or the organization that you are actually leading. And that is what I learned from being a student activist. I learned that it is important for you to listen to other people. It is important for you to be honest. And if I say you are honest, I'm saying you actually do not need to say one thing and mean the other. You need to be honest. You need to be able to communicate your beliefs and why you believe in that thing. But you must also acknowledge that society is very diverse. While you believe in one thing, other people may be believing on other things. You need therefore to be also transparent. You need to be clear. You need to be able to say, this is what I do, this is why I do it, and this is how I do it.
You went very philosophical on me, but I don't want to pin you down to specifics. This country is not doing well economically,
Yeah.
politically. How do we resolve our problems? Some of the problems cannot be resolved. You obviously won't have all of the answers that you, but we are in a problem. We have a problem. How do we solve? Because I feel as a country, we are in some way or another collectively sitting at the gate of the country and engaged in a hunger strike, collectively, that is. So how do you engage? How do we get in? How do we get in to be engaged, to break this impasse that we have as a country? That's what I want you to bring back all this potential and all these sources all over the world, which are stabilizing economies in other countries, doing well for corporates all over the world. How do we bring the best of these 1.2 million people?
Look, to be honest with you, my personal belief, and this is the belief of Podemo, of which I'm a member of, is that the biggest problem in Swaziland is the absence of democracy. And if you actually understand the fact that there is no democracy in Swaziland, it means the citizens of the country cannot therefore participate in any activity that is meant to improve their lives, the lives of others, and the country as a whole. Now, if we want to solve the problem, I'm going to put it direct, and this is my belief, and it has always been my belief from the time when I was young. We need to talk about how we open up for people who have got ideas to actually come and share those ideas. Be it political ideas, be it ideas that relate to the economy, be it ideas that relate to health, religion, and all the different aspects of life. We need to be able to open to that. Now, people will tell you that, but democracy this, democracy that. Now, my philosophy is that probably maybe democracy is not the best system that one can talk about, because then that's what people say. Perhaps another system has to be developed. But one thing that I can say is that whatever the system is, it has to be transparent. It has to promote accountability or demand accountability. And it has to actually ensure the rights of the people or the Bill of Rights. Now, if you look at that, for me, that is democracy. So you would be developing a new system or democracy in another name. So for me, the solution is democracy, because democracy allows people to freely share their ideas without fear, for them to be able to say the things that they like and the things that they don't like. So if you look at the political front, the majority of the Swazi people are not allowed to participate in politics. It doesn't mean that these people do not know what they want in life. They know exactly what they want. They have ideas on how the country can be better governed. They should therefore be allowed to actually voice that without fear. And that is the part that is missing on the political front. On the economy, like you're saying, there are a lot of Swazis everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, you are bound to meet at least one Swazi. Very educated, with brilliant ideas, but they lack the forum or the space where they can actually voice their ideas.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure what
I want to be specific to the issue of good governance to him, given the position that he holds and the failures of good governance and at the University of Swaziland, at least as a reference point. You may have followed, Mr. Stolle, the university. Over the years, you may have seen the comments here. They have not changed. The things that you were complaining about, the closing of the university because it doesn't want to listen to students and then bringing it back, all those things have not really changed. And also the depreciation of the quality of the courses in the university statue in the world and all of that. What are the solutions for our university on the one end, but also what are the solutions for clean governance in the country as a whole? And I would assume I'll put you on the spot because you now wield some kind of level of influence. And most of the people in your position find themselves the stench of corruption. I mean, there's a lot of not promoting young women into positions of influence in the corporate sector. Sorry, not in the in government and otherwise. So, what do you feel would be an ideal answer to some of the challenges of clean governance and stuff like that from your end? Let me try. I think I see that you seem to be muted. Let me try to. Oh. Can you hear me?
Ken?
Yeah, sure. I can hear you now.
All right. Yes. Yeah, host, it's actually a difficult question that you've just asked. As you were asking it, I was thinking. And also as Lines was speaking, I was thinking as well. But you've given me the side of corporate. Mm-hmm. Well, taking from the lessons I learned as a student leader, I think what wins all things is strategy. Even where I'm sitting today as the CEO of the organization, what makes the organization I'm working for a successful organization, it's pragmatic strategy. Now, if you look at the components of a strategy, you see right at the top, you will see vision. Where do you want to take this institution to in the next 3, 4, or 5 years? If you can explain that very clearly, then it will be easy for you to attach to that vision the ethics, the values that goes with it. For me to achieve this, I need these values to be the foundation of everything. And then you are able to then bring in
we seem to have lost you there, Mr.
Your to say this is what I want to push in the period to deliver on it. Then when you've done your SWOT analysis, you've done your pastille, you'll be able to come up with what you need to do. Majority of cases for a university, it is their students. They are a university because of their students. If they build up a strategy that says we want to produce the best students in the world, then they will be able to put in place focus areas that will simply help them achieve that. And then they put an organizational structure that will implement that strategy. And that organizational structure should be resolved with capable people, people that have the talent to lead, not people that have achieved PhDs and papers to be professors. People that can lead the institution the best possible way by managing the strategy. Now, in the majority of cases, you find that people would have a strategy as a nice to have. And then when they develop an organizational structure to implement that strategy, it becomes something else. I can also take this to the country itself. If the country comes up with a vision today, like the Vision 2020 that is there right now, the country will realize to actually achieve Vision 2020, the country needs its people. Everywhere, wherever they are, the country needs them. And then the country will come up with a strategy of how do we harness all the brains that are out there to achieve the vision that as a country we have. Be it democracy, be it whatever, like Lyons has said, but it should be something that will fit the delivery of the vision. So basically, I can say it's just that one thing, strategy. Strategy to take us wherever we want to be. The world over have had that strategy. We can take the nasty one, for instance, as I'm closing, we can take the nasty one, which is the Hitler one in Germany. They wanted a name under the sun and they were clear about it. So they went on to select their blue-eyed boys to deliver on that strategy. And they went on to actually engage the whole world in a Second World War because they wanted a name under the sun. So it's basically a strategy that will take you where you want to go. If you don't have a strategy, forget it. Economic development, you still have to have an economic strategy, an economic model that you want to follow in order to deliver. Let me make an example for our country as well. I think when it comes to the economy, the country already has some very good clues because already they are now investing in their people. You can imagine the multi-millions that have been, not multi-millions, multi-billions that have been invested on the smallholder farmer in the rural communities out there. You can tell that these people have made a resolution to bring up the poor of the poor of the population. Now the question is, how do you then bring people that can transform the whole aspects of the country, political, social, and economical? That's probably where the country needs to start working hard. Thank you, Hosta.
You're suggesting also that we may need to get all of our brains, the best of the brains, to make life out of this strategy, whatever part we decide, but have everyone on, right?
Yes, that's correct. Remember, Host, in our lifetime and the future to come, it's not about things, it's about people. It's not about aircraft, it's not about cars, it's not about houses, it's not about roads, it's about people. And if we harness all the brains that are there as a country, and if we bring all our people to participate, be it in the political sphere, be it in the social sphere, be it in the economic sphere, we are bound to win as a country, irrespective of whatever political vehicle we decide to embark on.
Mm. No, thank you. So Mr. Stolle, on your last bite, I want you to look at the comments and the questions on the side, and then you can, it will be part of your closing remarks. I want to come to Lines so that he comes with his closing remarks before I come in, that you close from some of the questions. Lines, people are asking specific questions around, for example, what does democracy entail for you, Linus? What is democracy? Because I guess Nongaba wants to know, because anyone says whatever model he's using is democracy. Does it mean that is democracy, and what does really entail? And then also you may, okay, maybe I can ask Mr. Stolle to talk about the issues of the commemoration as it is being asked. But I would like you to much more deal with the social political issues, that because even as a student leader, you were able to transition beyond just being a student. I want you to give your closing remarks, but first by defining, as Nongaba wants to know, what is it exactly do you mean when you say you want democracy? But number two, there has been for you, I mean, aren't you not tired? It's been a while. I mean, you most likely be going into your COVID area age, very soon. And in those ages, it means that, why? It's been a long protracted battle, this thing about democracy. Are you finding that we are at a stage where, even as a country, we have accepted that, look, this may not happen in our lifetime. We may very well do what is within us. And if that is the case, does it mean that your activism over the years outside and in the university were in vain? And then lastly, I want you to give me pointers on how do we harness the possibility of inclusion and inclusiveness in dialoguing, in talking about our issues that face us collectively as a country. And for you, coming from a perspective of an activist, how do we lock this door of dialogue, of negotiation, so that we can have all these voices helping into the country? Because we are kind of very polarized right now, yet for 1.2 million people, we shouldn't really be having this kind of polarization and be able to harness as much energy as possible of everyone.
Yeah. No, let me start with probably what is democracy, and I'm not even going to be philosophical about it, maybe just to avoid that. That is why actually I said, maybe democracy is not the best system that the world has ever seen or will ever see. Perhaps new systems have to be developed. But whatever system we develop, it must have three major components. One, it must be clear to every person on how things are done. So when we talk about a country, it must be clear, even to the dullest child, that this is how the country operates. These are the values of the country. This is what the country believes is right. This is what the country believes is wrong. This is how you are supposed to move or to walk if you want to get to this point. It must be very clear. It must be also clear how things are done in that particular country or that particular community or that particular society. In other words, it must be transparent. Whatever system you come up with, it must ensure and promote transparency. Right from the top, the ruling elite, to the bottom of the pyramid. It must be very clear what happens, how it happens, why it happens in that particular way. So that's the first pillar that I'm looking for. The second pillar that I'm looking for in this political system is that accountability must be paramount. It must be enforced. People must be responsible they must also be accountable for what they do. And that system must ensure that the people that lead, the people that take up leadership roles in that particular society or country, account to people that actually own that system. If you look at this, what is happening, for example, in Swaziland, we have got the Dinkundla elections, if I can put an example of that, where people are elected or selected or whatever it is. Those people are selected to go to parliament. When they get to parliament, they make laws. First and foremost, they never consult the people that elected them on their views on the particular act that is being developed. They just go there and they stand on their own. Secondly, they never go back to the electorate to actually account on what they have done, why they have done it in that particular way. So they are actually not responsible to anyone, or they don't respond to anyone, or they don't account to anyone, if I can actually use that thing. And for me, that is another problem. Then again, the most also important thing is that whatever political system that we have, people must be free. They must be free to express themselves. They must be free to choose who they talk to. They must be free what they talk about. And they must also be free to decide what they want to do, as long as what they are doing is within the rights of the bigger society. Now, if you look at these three pillars that I've just mentioned, those are the pillars that define democracy. So what I'm looking for, therefore, when I talk about democracy, I'm looking for a political system that actually allows this, that actually promotes this, that actually ensures that its citizens have actually or enjoy this. So for me, that is what I mean by democracy. Then probably, yeah. I'm trying to say.
But there were two parts to my questions.
Yes. You wanted to say something, or you wanted to?
No, continue.
Yeah, maybe you can remind me the second part as well, so that because I like talking. So
so the second part is about inclusivity. Mr. Stolle is suggesting that there is need to harness as many and as far wide voice as possible, so that everyone is able to have a voice, whatever we decide. How do we do this in practical terms? How do we create this inclusivity, this dialogue, so we don't get to be polarized between those who favor this system and those who don't favor? And how do we then get into that space? No, because it seems to the table is not there. How do we get to that table where we can then sit, have those intense discussions, agree or disagree, but still say, well, also as is, we all have the best interest of the country. This we don't agree, but for the interest of the country, can move us forward.
I think we can actually do that in two parts. If you look at the reason why probably people might have lost the interest in the country, is precisely because they don't feel like they are part of it. So if we want people to come back, and if we want to be inclusive, the first thing that we need to do is we need to relax or to stop doing the things that make people feel like they are not part of the country. They don't feel like they are accepted in this country. And again, I'm gonna.
Sorry, there's someone with some noise. I've muted everyone. So whoever is busy with, there's some disturbing noise that I'm picking from this side. So I can just ask my guests to try and kind of mute themselves so we don't have to. I don't want to destabilize. We're almost over. I want to get Mr. Stolle to make one last bite, because I didn't get anyone who was interested to make comments that I could have put in. But yeah, continue. So I guess we can just allow you to close, and then Mr. Stolle will also finish.
Yeah. So I'm saying, in a nutshell, let us make people feel like they are part of the country, because there's nothing you can do to force people to participate. It has to come from the innermost part of their lives. And that can be promoted by saying, I feel like I am part of the country. For example, if I stand up and I criticize the current government, I'm just shut down. And I'm made to feel like I am actually not part of this country because I can't say anything. If I come up with an idea, I'm also taken aside and say, no, you can't say that. So we need to stop doing that at all levels, particularly at the leadership level. That's the first thing that we need to do. Secondly, we need to stop being selfish, because there are people who actually act or believe that they actually care more about the country than the rest of us. Now, that needs also to change. Again, we need to actually acknowledge that most of us have got the best interest of the country. We may be differing on what is best for the country, but we all have got the best interest of the country. We must therefore move away from a situation that says, I know what is good of the country, and I therefore gonna make sure that what I believe is good for the country is what is going to happen. Once we stop doing that, then again, people will see that now they have got space to participate. And once they see that there is space to participate, they will then be willing to participate freely. They'll be willing to share their ideas in the different aspects of life. And therefore, we will be able then to get the best minds. As it is now, people do not feel that they are actually taken seriously in the country. That is why some will prefer to keep quiet.
Would you leave your cushy job in South Africa as a senior bank manager and come and be a teller at Nedbank Swaziland, if only to help the country, as it were? Because we want to put you on the spot. How committed are you to the process of planting our ideas and our efforts into making Swaziland great again? If I were to borrow from Trump, would you leave your senior managerial position for that bank teller job, if only for the good of the country?
Maybe there wouldn't be any need for me to leave. That's the first thing. And maybe there wouldn't be any need for me to go to Swaziland and take another job, because probably there are other spaces where I can actually give more to the country, and for me to do that, for me to be able to give more to the country, I need to be physically in the country. Then I wouldn't have a problem to do that. But what I'm looking for is a space that is opened so that if I feel that I can actually add value and let the country benefit from my adding value in that space, I must actually be allowed to do so. By allowed to do so, I mean that space must be available for me to actually do that. There's quite a lot of things actually that one can give. And speaking for myself, if you look at the academic background that I have, at Gualuseni, I wasn't doing science, physics and maths. I went and I did engineering. And then I went and I did finance. And then I went and I did strategy and leadership. I have all that knowledge that I'm actually itching to give back to the country, because the resources that brought me and made me who I am are the resources of the country of Swaziland. But I don't have an opportunity to give back. If I were to leave my job today and apply for a job in Swaziland, for example, where I feel that there is space for me to do this, probably I would get this job after turning 60 years.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Mabu.
That is what we need to change. That is what needs to change, and that is what we need to start working towards. We need to be able to say, everybody has something that they can contribute to the economy. Everybody has got something that can contribute to the politics. Let us just allow the space for them to freely and willingly come and contribute.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope that we won't move too far now from we are supposed to have ended quite earlier. So I want Mr. Stole to then wrap it up. There were questions here that I think you've seen. Just close them off a bit, and then before we in your last parting shot, please say something about good governance, because I think you are at a particular space where many of the people who are listening and following us, they are seeing that I can be a student leader, I can rise up and become a CEO, and I can use my experience over the years and all to help to help me influence the direction of whatever organization I am leading. And in this case, it could be that the experiences of the student activism of the time helps you in one or the other in your governance. So I want you to answer the questions that I think were related directly to the SRC, but also in your parting shot, talk a bit about good governance in the country and going forward for our viewers who are at home and everything. And what do we learn from you, and what do you want to give us as Umpago going or leaving this discussion? Oh, sorry. I think you are muted. I think I need to unmute you. Oh my goodness, how do I even? Oh yeah, yes. I think you are fine now.
All right. Do you want me to run through all 10 questions, or you just want me to summarize?
Yeah, I think if you were to summarize so that people don't, I didn't realize there were 10. I thought there were just 2. But those that you feel strongly on, you can pick on now before we allow the news at 8. I'm treating this as if we are on live SAPC 2.
All right. What I can say with the kind of questions, host, that you threw at us is that when it comes to the SRC or the student politics back then, I think we had a very tough time back then, but I think it also helped us grow. We know that, like we indicated, that the background to all of it, there was quite a lot that was happening in the environment. And as students, strategists, we managed to read the environment very well. And we were able to devise a strategy that carried us through. Like Lines indicated, that we just didn't want to be defeated at any point in time, because rolling from 1990, the Black Wednesday time, the subsequent years, there were quite a number of students that were excluded from the university. There is absolutely nothing unique about us and the hunger strike. Some students really suffered and suffered for life. There are those that I'm aware of that got excluded permanently. They had to go to other institutions to learn, to further their studies. For instance, there was an SRC led by Armstrong Simelane. Armstrong Simelane was brought back to the university by the courts of the country. And quite a number of his SRC members were permanently excluded from the university. And when we took over, we took over the leadership. We were well aware of these issues. And we were well aware as well that by the vicious actions on the students done by the administration and the state, actually were meant to kill the voice of the students. And we desperately needed to restore the voice of the students, because students wanted to express themselves freely, something that was not the case after the Black Wednesday. And I am glad that the SRC I participated in and I led actually restored the voice of the students, because after that, there were no students that were permanently excluded, save for a few instances where I think it's Maxwell or somebody that got arrested on political grounds. But I think beyond that, we've had a student body that's running its affairs well, save for the fact that probably the age is also counting. The university students of our days are quite younger than us. I recall that when I participated in the SRC, I was already a former teacher. I was from teaching, so I was matured in my own right. Again, when it comes to handling issues, I think I am fairly happy with the way we handled issues. Where we needed to consult the courts, we went to the courts. And fortunately, we won our cases. Where we had to bulldoze the university administration, we just had to do it, and we did it. And we did it successfully. Of course, I don't take away credit for, I wouldn't discredit the university administration 100%. They had to do something as well. The situation was quite volatile for everybody. But I'm glad that students stood their grounds at that time. And actually, students managed to influence politics in the country. There was a comment from your side that probably what we did as student leaders could end up in vain if nothing carries on. I think there is a lot that is carrying on. In terms of politics, the changes that have happened in politics are quite massive. But the truth of the matter is everything needs improvements here and there. And I think our people everywhere should not give up. What they believe is right for the country, they must stand up and point out. Eventually something will give. But where I'm sitting right now, I think we're sitting in a situation where you can talk. Before you couldn't, but where you can talk now. Remember, I'm the CEO of a state parastatal, but I am talking here freely. And I know I won't be victimized for speaking my mind right now. But I also know that in reality, when you look at our system today, I would say it's short of one thing. From my side, I would say it's short of the practicing ground. I don't think it serves us right to say, yes, Silwa APC of Swait and tomorrow is Minister of Agriculture. I haven't practiced anyway. But of course, if I am in the system, I've been there maybe twice or three times as an MP, and then now I'm a minister, probably I would play good politics. But where I'm sitting as a student activist of the time, I practiced quite a lot, and I already know a few or some of the things that I can say it's politics. Let me drop the questions there, host, and go to the corporate governance.
Yeah.
With regard to corporate governance, good corporate governance, it's actually something that I think Lyons spoke to quite well when he actually described his democracy. In corporate governance, you want to see mainly the segregation of duties. You want to see accountability. You want to see transparency. And somehow when one was in the SRC, practiced these things without knowing that he was doing corporate governance. If you recall, Lyons actually mentioned how I used to work with them, link them with the world, and how I would come back and report on what I have done, and how they would give me a new mandate, and I go out and execute that mandate. That's basically corporate governance at its best, as far as I'm concerned. But also, you also touched on a point of females being promoted or not promoted in the corporate place, which probably it's now an issue of practice. There's something very, very, very strange there in that when you promote ladies to positions of authority, they will quickly succeed themselves with males. And when they leave the organization, males again take over. So and when you talk to them, they tell you it's easy for them to work with males than other females. That's basically the experience I've had in the organization that I'm in right now. So otherwise, going back to corporate governance, that's what I can say, host, not unless you are expecting more.
Yeah, I just want to know one thing. Do you think there is a space for us to involve more young people?
Yes, definitely.
In leadership?
In leadership, yes. To be honest, I started being in the leadership of the organization that I'm in at a tender age. I think I was 26 years old when I became the agriculture manager of the organization. And where I'm sitting right now, only a few executive members of my executive, of my management team are above 40.
Oh, that's beautiful. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. We've kind of went overboard a bit, but it was worth it. We needed to hear those voices. Thank you so much, Mr. Stole and Mr. Mavimbela. Very insightful take. And then also being able to round it up on contemporary issues. Please, we will continue to seek your guidance, continue to seek your inputs. I mean, in future, even after this event, young person somewhere who's doing a Form 5 and going to university will look into this, reflect on these conversations, and be the brain that ultimately helps us all in terms of moving the country forward. So thank you so much. It's 9 o'clock. This is where we close our conversation. We will continue with the next batch of speakers. Thank you so much, Mr. Stole. Thank you so much, Mr. Mavimbe.
Thank you, and bye-bye, host.
Thank you. Oh, Lance, you were saying something. I see you have raised your hand. Sorry, I need to unmute you, Lance. Wait, I can't hear you. Please unmute yourself. I
have.
Yeah.
No. I wanted to say thank you, host. Thank you, Swipe. We hadn't spoken in a very long time, but I wanted to. I was hoping I would close with this because you asked me this question, and I actually deliberately left it out because I thought probably I would have a time to say something else again. You asked me if my efforts have been in vain.
Yes.
I wanted to say, I was hoping I was going to say, you know, when you are fighting for a change or when you are working for a change, you do that knowing that there is a possibility that that change may not come in your lifetime. But what is critical for the change agent is to do the best they can do during their time to contribute towards the overall journey. So what I have been doing since I was a student is that I have been contributing towards the change. I am convinced that one day that change will come. I'm convinced that there is another Swaziland somewhere where people will be free to say whatever they believe in, where they will be free to choose how they want to associate themselves. And that Swaziland is going to come. However, all Swazis need to participate in this journey. They need to play their part. So my contribution has not been in vain from the time when I was a student, because I have contributed and I've done my part into that. So I just wanted to say that. And I want to encourage everybody to actually have this attitude to say, I don't want to change the world tomorrow. I don't want to change the country tomorrow, but I want to make my honest and sincere contribution into this, which I believe it's going to be the best thing for the country in the future.
Yeah, someone is insisting that I shouldn't leave without asking you to say there were some, I mean, it seems the issues of students have not been resolved. Now students at SANU have been expelled. Someone wants to know what would be your advice to those students, and they have tried all they can, their voices are not ventilated. Any advice from your perspective, what these students can do at SANU, which have been expelled? Just as a last bite.
The students need to come together. They need to organize themselves. They need to strategize, and they need to execute. You know, one of the things or the advantages that the youth has in general, and I'm saying this because at some point in time I was part of youth, is that they are young, they have no commitments. They should therefore be able to organize themselves, and they should be able to go out and do the best they can to actually achieve the goals that they have set them up. Remember, the administrations will always be at loggerhead with the students, simply because they do not want the students to overpower them So the administration will always fight them. The students must plan better, they must organize better, and they must execute better.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I want to give them advice as well. My parting shot. Now I'm abusing my host, right? You know, there's a sense that amongst the youth in Swaziland that there's going to be a messiah somewhere, that there's someone who's going to help us and get things changed. I think the students and the youth in the country must realize generations before them, they sacrificed. I'm sure we are not romanticizing things. I think Mr. Tolo was right to say they were the lucky ones. Some students got expelled, so many things, there were casualties. So even in this case, I think they need to realize they are owned by themselves. That's all they have to do. And they've got to fight as if there's no one who is going to help them. And I think the world and the universe will respond to their own fights and their own spirited challenge to the administration. But again, thank you so much. I hope to when you wrap up the series, we'll have you back just to discuss now much more bigger things about Africa, about Swaziland, you know, so that we have a much more bigger perspective than just narrowed down to students. But once again, thank you so much and have a beautiful night.
You're welcome.
Bye. Bye.